I'm Daryl. This is Annina. We're from Futurice, and we're going to talk about our intelligence augmentation design toolkit.
I'm learning. So, for example, Daryl, he works as a data scientist,
Yes.
and myself, I'm a service designer. So our goal here is to bridge the gap, as we heard already, that we should bridge the gap between data science and service design. So that's our mission. We try to do that with this kit. And yeah.
I should say I'm a Scottish guy with a cold, so I'm sorry if no one can understand me, but let's see how that goes.
So, what happened in Dublin? We had 2 workshops about the same topic, intelligence augmentation, machine learning for everyone. And because the workshop is like 2 hours, so unfortunately here we try to squeeze it to 20 minutes and not actually have the workshop, but kind of give some insights about the topic and then introduce the tools, which you can find later online, and they are free. So we hope that you get something out from here that you can also try at home. And we were actually honored to be finalists also in the Service Design Award. So we didn't win, but it's also nomination, so we are super, super happy and glad about that. But what is this topic? AI, IA, machine learning, toolkit, everything. So that was the question like 1.5 years ago when we started this project. The first question was that what do they actually mean, these terms? So I'm going to hand over to Daryl, and he's going to explain a little bit about what this whole thing is about.
Yep. Yeah, so I guess the motivation for this kind of thing is that, as anyone who's ever been involved in a digital service project knows, making services is hard. And probably one of the hallmarks of any successful project is that it's collaborative. Can we change the slide? Yeah. So in order to make a good service, you need lots of different competences, some of which are on the next slide. So, designers, business expertise, software engineering, testing, marketing, all kinds of stuff. And the question we wanted to know the answer to was like, how does that change when you add data science into the mix? And there's a few things that change. Like, I think first and foremost is that there's a lot of new terminology. So, like artificial intelligence is a really hyped up topic, and it's like if you ask 5 different people what they mean by artificial intelligence, you'll get 5 different answers. So I think it's important when you try to like collaborate on these projects that everyone kind of knows what you're talking about. Like when you say artificial intelligence, when you say machine learning, when you say big data, or any of these kind of long list of kind of new terms that data scientists throw around, it's good that everyone knows what they're talking about. So that was kind of one goal that we saw the need for. Was that we needed this common language between people like me who have math PhDs and everyone else, I guess. Yeah. So then the next thing that changes when you add machine learning into a service is that you have kind of some inherent uncertainty that you might not have in a regular service. So machine learning and data science and artificial intelligence are mostly about kind of statistical models and like looking at the past to try and predict the future. And when you do that, like there's a risk that you're going to come across a situation that you've never seen in the past, like you don't have any data for, and therefore you can't predict exactly what your thing's going to do. It's going to make mistakes at some point, which is kind of different from a regular service. Like you're on a web page and you click this button, excuse me, you click this button and you know that you go to this certain other page, so you can kind of deterministically know the flow of the user through the application. But when you have this kind of random statistical behavior, that's not true. So being able to design for that is an important thing that we kept seeing in projects. Yeah, so like tools to design for failure. That's something we really wanted to build into our data science projects. And then a third thing that changes is that you have certain risks. In addition to these kind of like errors that might crop up now and then, that are sort of just part of the operation of the service if you decide to include machine learning, there are also kind of things like this. where Google Photos added this feature, which would automatically tag the people, the photos that people uploaded. And a couple of days after the feature rolled out, like someone tweeted about this, that certain people of color were being identified as gorillas, which is horrible for the users. It's a PR disaster for Google. And my best guess is that it probably could have been avoided with a bit more careful design if they thought about what is the actual context of use of this thing, and thought about like, do they have the right data to to train these models? Like, do they have enough people of like different races and different backgrounds to avoid kind of embarrassing mistakes like this? Excuse me. Yeah, and then if anyone's heard of Microsoft Day, there was a chatbot that kind of went wild after like 12 hours of interacting with Twitter. It was like designed to tweet like a teenage girl, but after like 12 hours, it was tweeting out like Nazi rhetoric and hate speech and like wanted to kill feminists. It's pretty bad. So when machine learning fails, or I guess machine learning opens you up to kind of modes of failure that are not in normal services, and they can be quite spectacular. So there's a lot of risk that could be involved there. So that's kind of another motivating factor, is that you have to be able to understand those. Like, you need to know, if I'm going into a project that might have these new risks, what are they and how likely are they? So that was another kind of motivating factor to do something about this. Next slide. This is you.
So basically, that was the short introduction to the topic, and we tried to come up with the tool that would help us when we design these services. And it says there that it's not unique to any business area. It's like there's so many use cases, so many places, it's everywhere. So it's really, really important that we can have something that can bring us to the table, and we can use the tool as a common tool to come up with solutions and kind of learn about these things. And so this is the toolkit, and we have the printed copies here as well, but it's online and it's Creative Commons. We want to give this for the world, so anyone can download that. We have the address at the end actually. And I can actually, if you want to take a look, you can open it up and put it around, and there's cards inside.
Pass one from the other side.
Yeah.
Who else is talking?
So as I mentioned, this happened like the initial start happened like a year and a half ago. So we originally made this toolkit for Helsinki Design Week 2017, where we ran the first workshop. But then we realized that there's actually been a lot of demand for this type of stuff. So actually we've been going around and giving workshops around this. And now I think we've met like 1,000 people so far, and in 4 countries during this year. And even though I think in Helsinki area in Finland we've had like, 10 cities maybe in Finland altogether. It's like many places, conferences, workshops, meetups, everything. And I really hope that, because it's a free tool, people can take it and use it also on their own, so we don't have to be like involved all the time. But this is the goals. It's really to bridge the design and tech, to have this common language and have a like analog tool like papers, which is easy to handle. You don't need computers, you don't need anything, like you don't have to know how to code, for example. You can just come and start from here. And it's also to stay tangible, like to have something concrete and then make complex simple, because this AI topic, it's really, really complex. It's hard to kind of, if you try to put it in the words, it's a little bit hard to understand. But with these cards, we try to make it like concrete, easier to handle, so to say. Do you want to tell about?
Yeah, so like Annina says, it's both the physical tools, so cards, and there's some canvases which we didn't bring, but you can download them from our website. And the idea behind all these tools is to kind of like, when you go into a new project and you're kind of throwing around ideas and you're trying to concept how you might use machine learning to support some business area or some client or whatever, like the tools are intended to kind of structure your thinking. So you go through like important issues like designing for failure and thinking about these kind of worst case scenarios that you might not normally consider, but you really have to when you have machine learning in the mix, to avoid ending up in the kind of Google or Microsoft situation. And then there's also, like, we've been running a lot of workshops using these tools, And we now have a kind of variety of formats from like 90 minutes up to kind of full day workshops, which kind of teach these things and get people kind of hands-on experience of designing a service that has these intelligent components. How those workshops go. So usually there's like half an hour in the beginning where I just ramble and talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning and kind of what are the good application areas, and like what is the role of the designer in these kind of projects and all that stuff. And then once I'm done boring people to death, they start working in small teams, and there's kind of a mix of like short, 3 to 5 minute kind of introductions to a new concept, and then time spent actually using those cards or thinking about that concept or discussing in teams. And for most of the workshops, we kind of set everything in the context of a shopping mall, just because we found that when you let people we try to teach people, but you also let them situate it in their own business area, they tend to go down the rabbit hole and kind of spend more time thinking about their business problems than about trying to learn this new stuff. But everyone's been to a shopping mall, so it's kind of a familiar setting to do this kind of service concepting. Yep. And yeah, there's right there on the box, it says the Intelligence Augmentation Design Toolkit, so we should probably define what we mean by that. So intelligence augmentation is when you have kind of machine learning in your service in a user-facing capacity. So artificial intelligence, like I said, there's many different ways you can define it, but I tend to define it as like a computer system that tries to replace something that a human does, some human behavior in like one task or maybe a small set of tasks. But so examples of things that replace people are like self-driving cars. Like if your self-driving car gets good enough, you don't have to drive anymore. But this toolkit is more designed for services where the machine learning is still kind of human in the loop, where the machine learning makes people better in some tasks they can already do. So like Google search is the kind of original and best example, maybe. Like the interaction with Google is still user-driven. You type stuff in the box, you click on links, you refine your queries. But machine learning is kind of under the hood, making you better at finding that knowledge. Like you could theoretically do the stuff that Google does in order to complete one search, but it would take like a year for every search that you did. So yeah, like the toolkit has a definite kind of B2C focus, where you're designing services where there's an actual customer interacting with machine learning somehow.
I could also add on top of that, like we, as a designers, it's also like our responsibility to come up with things like how can we make the humans better in this context. Like we can design the services and we should take the active role there, like coming up with services that actually utilize this but not replacing humans. Because there is this fear like everywhere that machines going to do this and that and robots going to replace people, this and that. But it's really in our hands as a designers. That's why I think it's super important to understand the tech part as well. Like to be able to kind of come up with services that are like giving more to humans and kind of keeping humans in the loop as well. But this is basically the set, and you can find everything online again.
Except for these.
Except for these, yeah, and don't steal them. So it's like we have these sets of cards there, and we have some canvases. And basically, the first one is a collection for your ideas. Like when you come up with a concept, when you do things, you can mark down your who is the customer, what is the need, and everything, like one by one. That is like a collection canvas. Then the second one on top, it's a map. It could be any kind of map, whatever you have at home, wherever you are, wherever your client is. It doesn't really matter as long as you have some context. It can be digital, it can be somewhere else. But we are using the physical map because, yeah, that's the base for the learning part, to have some place that is familiar for everyone. And then if I jump to the bottom row, we have the cards, we have channels and touch points, and we also have like machine learning, the 4 basic categories there that people can kind of get familiar with and then use them as helping tools. And the cards in the middle, we've been cooperating with Fonecta, so that's kind of based on Finnish market research, but unfortunately those are not online. Instead, online you have a template where you can fill in your own customer and your own project, and and then you can introduce the top right.
The two things on the right here are a bit more data specific. So once you kind of like map out what your customer's journey is and then ideate some concepts about how the machine learning is going to support them using all the cards in the first canvases, then here you can kind of go a bit deeper into what this one is mostly for what happens when your machine learning makes a mistake. And there's kind of two different kinds of mistakes, false positives and false negatives that it can make. And the canvas is intended to get you to think about kind of what's like the emotional impact on the user for those errors, what's the kind of business impact of those errors, and should they be prioritized somehow? Because in general, you can get rid of one kind of error, but at the expense of making more of the other. Then we have this deck of unexpected bug cards, which are kind of weird things that can happen with machine learning, like, you know, someone making your chatbot into a Nazi, or your app becoming racist, or your sensitive trading data being hacked and released.
Why do you have so many bug cards?
That's the world.
There's like 11 bug cards, and there's probably things we haven't thought of yet that should go in there. Like there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong here. But yeah, like I said, like it's easy to kind of get lost in the possible kind of value and like, oh wow, like AI is gonna revolutionize the world, but also it can really, really fuck up. So it's important to think about those things and design for those things.
Yeah, and also like strategies, like for example in this confusion matrix, like when we kind of map out the 4 different scenarios, then we can think about the customer service strategies for the situations, like what should I actually do as if my customers, for example, end up in this kind of situation, like in a bank or wherever, like whatever the context is about, like how should I design the service so that it kind of takes into account all these different possible paths. But because we kind of think about the good scenarios, but we might forget like that what if something goes really, really wrong? We should have a strategy for that as well.
Is this me? Is this you? I don't know. Yeah, so we've been kind of talking pretty fast through the materials. The workshop obviously goes into more detail on all of these topics. But if you haven't been to our workshop, we have over on the table at the side a lot of these books that basically summarize kind of the reasoning behind this, the role of the designer, and how to actually use the toolkit. So if you're interested in this stuff, please grab one from over there.
There should be 50 copies, so there should be one for each. And if someone doesn't get one, we can always give it later. So please take one with you.
Yeah.
And some photos from the Dublin workshop. So 2 sessions and really, really all kind of cool concepts. For example, here people were designing for this Martha, who was 70 years old, smart shopping basket customer.
Yeah, and we had 2 like fully booked sessions, and it was a lot of fun.
Yay!
Yeah. Yeah, this is our we didn't win photo from this.
We're still happy.
But yeah, like Annina was saying in the beginning, all this stuff is free online and is Creative Commons licensed. So if you want to take it, download it, remix it, do what you want, then please do so. iadesignkit.com is the place. And thank you.
Thank you.